Imagine thousands of soldiers trapped between life and death, and their survival hinges on a single, almost unbelievable shield trick. A tactic so simple, so clever, and so effective that it changed the outcome of entire battles. Yet almost no one today remembers it. Chapter 1. The battlefield, where death was certain fire, arrows, and the chaos of ancient warfare. Before we talk about the shield trick itself, the clever maneuver that saved thousands, we need to step onto the battlefield as it truly was. Not the clean, choreographed versions we see in movies, but the raw, choking, deafening reality that ancient soldiers faced every time they marched into war. Picture this. The morning fog still clings to the earth. The sun isn't fully awake. And yet, thousands of men stand shoulder to shoulder, knowing very well that before the day ends, many of them will lie on the ground with their last breath fading into the dust. The battlefield is quiet, too quiet. And then it begins. A horn blasts, drums thunder, and suddenly, the world erupts into chaos. From the enemy's ridge, a massive cloud begins to rise. Not smoke, not dust, arrows, thousands of them. They darken the sky so completely that one soldier once wrote, "It felt as though the sun had been stolen." This was the moment soldiers feared most. Not the sword-to-sword combat. At least then you could see your attacker. No, what terrified them were volleys of arrows shot from hundreds of meters away. Death came silently from above. You could do everything right and still die simply because you were standing in the wrong place when the sky broke open. Now imagine a farmer from some small village, dragged into service because his lord demanded it. He's barely trained, shaking with fear, holding a wooden shield that looks far too small and far too thin. He stares upward as arrows fall like angry rain. He crouches, he prays. But he knows. This thin piece of wood can't save him from the storm. Throughout ancient history, armies were losing men before the fighting even began. Entire units could be wiped out in minutes by archers positioned safely on hillsides or behind fortifications. The mathematics of it were horrifying. A Roman archer could shoot 12 arrows a minute. A Persian archer could shoot even faster. A single volley from 2,000 archers meant more than 20,000 arrows dropping at once. Most soldiers didn't even see the arrow that killed them. Commanders knew this. Generals hated it. Armies throughout Greece, Rome, China, Persia, and medieval Europe all faced the same problem. How do you move forward when death rains from the sky? And here lies the most important part. Before the shield trick was invented, shields were used individually. Every man fought for himself. Every man tried to survive by blocking whatever was right in front of him. It was chaotic, uncertain, and incredibly dangerous. A sword? You could parry. A spear you could dodge, but arrows? Arrows didn't care how skilled you were. Arrows didn't care how brave you were. They fell on heroes and cowards the same. Ancient writers describe the sound of an incoming volley as a long, rising hiss, like a giant serpent slithering through the sky. Seconds later, the sound would break into the thumping, splitting crack of arrows piercing shieldwood and flesh. And yet, through all this terror, commanders demanded their men hold formation. It wasn't bravery, it was discipline. If one man broke and ran, others would panic too. Fear spread faster than fire. Entire armies collapsed before the enemy even reached them. It was in this world of terror, this world where the sky itself could kill you, that the shield trick was born. Not from glory, not from heroism, but from desperation. From the simple, urgent question: how do we stop our men from dying before the battle even begins? Soldiers needed more than courage. They needed a system, a formation, a way to turn individual shields into something much bigger than themselves. And just when things seemed hopeless, one army, one group of soldiers, looked at their shields and realized something no one else had seen. A realization that would change warfare forever. But who discovered this trick first? And how did one simple idea become a life-saving strategy used across continents? That's where Chapter 2 begins. Chapter 3. The Shield Trick Explained. The formation that saved armies. The turtle, the wall, and the folding world of shields. Now that we've seen how the idea sparked, it's time to unveil the full power of the shield trick, the technique that turned terrified soldiers into an unstoppable moving fortress. Because once commanders understood what overlapping shields could do, they transformed that simple instinct into something bigger, smarter, and astonishingly effective. This is where the battlefield begins to shift. This is where arrows lose their dominance. This is where the shield stops being a personal tool and becomes a weapon of collective survival. The birth of the living wall. The first stage of the trick was simple. Align shields so tightly that no arrow could slip through. But as armies refined the idea, this single concept blossomed into an entire system of formations. Start with the most basic version, the shield wall. Picture a row of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, each shield overlapping slightly with the next. From a distance, it looks like a single unbroken slab of wood and metal stretching across the line. No gaps, no weakness. The shields lock like scales on a dragon. But the brilliance didn't stop there. Commanders discovered that if they trained soldiers to move together, step, brace, tighten, repeat, the wall could advance while still absorbing impact. Arrows didn't matter. Thrown spears bounced off. Even cavalry charges slowed when they hit a unified front instead of scattered individuals. It was strength through unity, simple but revolutionary. The trick evolves. A roof over the army. The real genius came next. Shield walls protected the front. But what about the sky? Arrows didn't always strike horizontally. Most came from above. So armies needed something more than a wall. They needed a roof. This is where the shield trick became a masterpiece. Soldiers in the front row held their shields straight forward. The men behind them raised theirs overhead, and the men on the ends angled their shields outward. Suddenly, the formation transformed from a line into a box, a moving shelter, a fortress made of men and wood. Imagine looking at this from above. Not individuals, but a single armored creature, flexible, mobile, breathing. Wherever arrows dominated the battlefield, the shield trick emerged. Different shapes, different materials, same idea. A collective defense stronger than any individual. How it worked, the secret mechanics. To understand why this trick was so life-saving, picture yourself inside the formation. You're the second row. Your shield is above your head. You can barely see. Your arms burn. Sweat drips down your temple. But you trust the rhythm. The front row absorbs frontal impact. If even one soldier lowers his shield, the entire structure weakens. That's why discipline mattered more than brute strength. A weak soldier who stayed steady was more valuable than a strong one who panicked. Arrows rain down, but they clatter harmlessly against a unified shell. Sling stones smash against the roof, but bounce off at safe angles. Spears break, javelins crack, and enemy archers grow frustrated. And the enemy is watching a slow, unstoppable advance heading straight toward them. The psychological shock. The shield trick wasn't just physical protection, it was psychological warfare. Imagine being an enemy archer. You fire volley after volley into a formation that simply ignores your arrows. You expect to break the enemy before they reach you, but instead, they march forward untouched. Silent, disciplined, unified. Fear shifts. The powerless become powerful. The shield trick was now perfected. But to truly appreciate its power, we must step into real battles. Moments where these formations didn't just work. They decided the fate of entire armies. Which battles were turned from disaster to victory because of this tiny idea. That's where Chapter 4 takes us next. Chapter 4. Thousands saved. Real battles where it made the difference. Victory from the shadow of shields. To truly understand how powerful the shield trick became, we need to leave training grounds and step into real battles. Moments where the difference between life and death came down to a few inches of wood, iron, and discipline. These were the battles where the shield formation didn't just work. It transformed the outcome of war. Let's walk into 3 such moments, 3 snapshots of history where thousands survived because men learned to think and move as one. The Roman siege, arrows like rain, and a moving fortress. The year is 52 BCE. The Romans are assaulting a Gallic stronghold perched high on a cliff. The defenders have an advantage: elevation. They rain down arrows, stones, burning pitch, anything heavy or sharp enough to crush a man. Now imagine being a Roman legionary on that day. You're trying to build siege ramps under a constant hail of projectiles. Every time one man breaks position, he's replaced by another, only for another volley to kill him too. The legionaries know that without protection, they'll never get close enough to take the fortress. The front ranks form a wall. From above, Gallic warriors watch in disbelief as hundreds of Romans move upward under a shell of interlocked shields. Their arrows strike thud, thud, thuddy, but almost none hit flesh. A formation that once existed only in training now becomes the one thing preventing disaster. The Romans reach the wall, throw their hooks, climb, and take the position. Many historians say without the shield trick, the Romans would have lost hundreds, maybe thousands, before even reaching striking distance. But that day, they advanced like a creature with iron skin and survived. The Greek phalanx, a hedge of spears and shields. Centuries earlier, the Greeks perfected another version of the shield trick, the phalanx. Picture a flat plain in ancient Greece. Two armies face each other, but one side is far more trained and disciplined. Their shields overlap perfectly, and behind them bristle long spears, an impenetrable hedge of death. When the enemy archers fire, the formation leans its shields upward, forming a slanted wall. Arrows skid off harmlessly. The line does not break, not even a step. On the battlefield of Marathon in 490 BCE, this mattered more than ever. The Persians relied heavily on arrows. Entire volleys were meant to break enemy lines before their infantry arrived. But when they fired at the Greek phalanx, the effect was almost laughable. Most arrows bounced away. Protected and unified, the Greeks charged with terrifying precision. The Persians, shocked that their initial volleys had done nothing, panicked. Their formation faltered. That battle ended with a Persian retreat and thousands saved on the Greek side. And all because shields didn't protect just individuals, they protected the entire unit. The European knights and archers faced Ottoman troops known for deadly archery. Crossbowmen were vulnerable. They took several seconds to reload, during which a single arrow could kill them. The trick worked, even when everything else went wrong. Why these battles matter. Across continents and centuries, these formations proved one thing. The shield trick saved lives not by brute force, but by intelligence, discipline, and unity. It didn't matter if you were Roman, Greek, Persian, or medieval European. If your army understood how to move shields together, you had an advantage no amount of individual strength could match. Walls, roofs, turtles, boxes, hedges, different names, different materials. Same purpose: turning vulnerable men into a moving fortress. But what happened when new, terrifying weapons arrived, weapons that could punch through shields and formations alike? Could the shield trick survive the rise of gunpowder? That is the story waiting for us in Chapter 5. Chapter 5: Evolution, Glory, and the Tragic Decline of the Shield Trick Gunpowder, Cannons, and the End of an Era. For hundreds of years, the shield trick was the closest thing soldiers had to a miracle. It turned ordinary men into walls, marching fortresses, and impenetrable domes of survival. Wherever arrows filled the air, the formation followed. It was universal. It was dependable. It was genius. But no tactic, no matter how brilliant, lasts forever. Because the day came when something new arrived on the battlefield. Something louder, something deadlier, something that didn't fall gently from the sky like arrows, but roared forward with explosive fury. Gunpowder, and with it came a slow, painful death for the greatest shield strategy ever invented. The first cracks in the fortress. At first, armies tried to keep their beloved shield trick alive. After all, it had saved countless lives. Why let it go without a fight? But the signs of change appeared early. Yet the problem wasn't speed. It was penetration. A well-fired arrow might bruise you through armor, but a lead ball could punch through wood, iron, leather, bone. Everything. Suddenly, even the thickest shield began to feel like a lie. Soldiers who once marched boldly began to flinch again. The familiar safety of the shield wall felt weaker each season. and commanders saw it too. The turtle could be crushed. Cannons. The true executioners of the shield formation. If firearms wounded the tactic, cannons killed it. The formation locks. Shields rise overhead. Soldiers kneel in perfect rhythm. And then, boom! A cannonball tears through the wall like it's made of paper. The men behind it have no chance. The shield trick was never designed for explosive shockwaves or projectiles that weighed as much as a horse's skull. It had met its natural opponent, and it was losing fast. The last stand of the shield-bearers. But old habits die hard. Some armies refused to abandon their centuries-old tactics. The shields that once protected crossbowmen offered no defense against metal balls propelled by explosions. It became painfully clear. The shield trick was living on borrowed time. The tactical shift, a new kind of survival. As shields lost relevance, armies began searching for new methods of protection. They discovered a truth that still shapes modern warfare. If you can't block bullets, you must avoid them. So formations changed, lines spread out. Soldiers moved faster. Commands shifted from stand together to fight apart. Cover replaced shielding. Earthworks replaced walls. Speed replaced unity. It wasn't as glorious, but it was effective. The age of the shield wall, the shield roof, the shield turtle, everything that once defined battlefield survival, began to fade into legend rather than living practice. The quiet end of a brilliant idea. By the 1700s, the shield trick had completely disappeared from European warfare. Only a few regions, like parts of Africa, India, and Japan, continued to use shields, but not in the old overlapping formations. The turtle had retreated into the history books, and yet something beautiful happened. Even as shields vanished from battlefields, the idea behind the shield trick survived. The notion that unity saves lives, that individuals become stronger when they lock together, that survival isn't about lone heroes, but about trust, coordination, and discipline. The shield trick might have died physically, but its spirit lived on in every coordinated military tactic that followed. From trench warfare to modern riot police phalanxes, to soldiers covering one another in urban combat, the principle endured. And now comes the final question. If the shield trick is gone, what does it leave behind? What does it teach us today, not as soldiers, but as people? That answer awaits in Chapter 6. Chapter 6. The Legacy of the Shield Trick. What it teaches us today. Unity, survival, and the wisdom hidden in a piece of wood. The shield trick began as a desperate idea on a battlefield soaked with fear. It saved thousands of lives, shaped centuries of warfare, and outlived the armies that used it. But now, long after arrows have stopped darkening the sky, its true legacy isn't found in old weapons or broken shields. It's found in us. Because when you look closely, the shield trick isn't just a military tactic. It's a story about humanity itself. Let's step back from the blood and chaos of the ancient world and step toward the quieter, deeper lesson hiding inside that formation. A lesson written in wood and iron, we survive together. Imagine standing in a shield wall again. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder, your vision is blocked, your hearing muffled. Your life depends not on your own actions, but on the discipline and trust of the person beside you. If he falters, you suffer. If you falter, he suffers. Only together do you stand a chance. This wasn't just battlefield strategy, it was a human truth. Survival has always belonged to groups more than individuals. From early tribes hunting mammoths, to village farmers working the land, to firefighters today forming human chains, to healthcare workers supporting each other in crisis. The shield trick was proof that people are strongest when they protect more than themselves. It teaches something we often forget. A single shield saves one life. A wall of shields saves 1,000. The quiet strength of trust. Formations like the Testudo required absolute trust. Trust that the man behind you would lift his shield on time. Trust that the one beside you wouldn't run. Trust that the front line would hold even as arrows fell like rain. In our modern world, we rarely face arrows or spears, but we face other storms. Uncertainty, fear, change, pressure, responsibility. And just like ancient soldiers, we don't endure those storms alone. Communities recovering from hardship. Every one of these moments is a kind of shield wall. The shield trick may no longer appear on battlefields, but it appears every day in the small ways people protect one another. Why the trick still lives in modern forces. Even though shields are no longer the deciding factor in war, modern armies still use a version of the same idea. Riot police lock shields to form barriers against incoming objects. Rescue teams interlock arms to stabilize in dangerous terrain. Soldiers in urban combat stack up, each one covering the next as they move through tight alleys. Different tools, different threats. When we talk about ancient warfare, it's easy to focus on tactics, armor, or legendary victories. But we forget that behind every shield was a human being. Cold, scared, tired, breathing hard, hoping to return home. The shield trick wasn't born from textbooks. It wasn't carved into stone tablets by kings. It wasn't invented in a palace or temple. Hope that unity could overcome fear, and that hope is as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. The final reflection, what it means for us. So, what does the shield trick teach us today? It teaches us that small ideas can save countless lives. It teaches us that the greatest innovations come not from luxury, but from necessity. It teaches us that trust is a force stronger than fear. And most importantly, it teaches us that unity is our oldest and most powerful weapon. The ancient soldier who first overlapped his shield with another didn't realize he was creating a tactical revolution. He just wanted everyone to survive. When people stand together, danger loses its power. When people protect one another, even the sky full of arrows cannot break them. And maybe, just maybe, it is the real miracle behind the tactic that once saved thousands of soldiers.